Hi there, I'm Maura Schumacher and I work for the Kenai Watershed Forum as the Invasive Species Specialist. Today we're going to go over some of the invasive species we might find on the peninsula. We'll talk about how to ID them. We'll also talk about some potential threats, and that is species that we don't necessarily have yet on the Kenai Peninsula, but we should definitely be looking out for as we're out and about in the summer. So why should we be concerned about an invasive species? To start off with, an invasive species is a non-native plant or animal that causes either ecological, economic, or human harm. So some of the ecological impacts of invasive species are that they reduce biodiversity, they decrease availability and quality of key natural resources, they disrupt habitats for species such as salmon and moose, they can alter water chemistry and interrupt stream flow, and they can increase frequency of fire and flooding. Some of the economic impacts are that the value and quality of land is degraded and decreases in quality and quantity. The cost of controlling and eradicating invasive species can be very large. For an example, Alodia could cost the commercial salmon fishery $159 million per year if it is allowed to continue spreading. We're going to talk about the invasion curve. So a lot of places in the lower 48 where invasive species are kind of rampant and all over the place, they've gotten to a point where eradication isn't quite possible for a lot of species. We're lucky here in Alaska because of the low population of humans and the lack of infrastructure in a lot of areas that we're able to kind of stay ahead of where this invasion curve kind of spikes upward. So we kind of avoid getting to that place on the curve through education and prevention. So some of the species that are priorities for the Kenai Peninsula and where we believe eradication is still possible, these species include Alodia, northern pike. Some terrestrial species include white sweet clover, Canada thistle, birdvetch, and orange hawkweed. And then the woody tree species, European birdcherry. So we'll start with birdvetch. Birdvetch is a vine-like plant that spreads horizontally. It can climb trees and choke out native vegetation. We only have a very few populations of this species on the Kenai Peninsula. It can be identified by its purple flowers, and at the end of the stem, it has a tendril, and it acts as a vine. So the tendril can attach to things, and it continues growing. Here are some more birdvetch infestations that we've found on the Kenai Peninsula. Another species we're on the lookout for is Canada thistle, also known as creeping thistle. This, as you can see in that photo, it can grow in really dense thickets and mats. There are only 2 known populations of Canada thistle on the Kenai Peninsula as of now. This is something we want to stay ahead of. We want to prevent it from spreading very far onto the peninsula. So this species, it can be identified by its purple, really beautiful purple flowers. It's definitely, it's a thistle. All the leaves have pokies on them. It is very easy to identify because of the way that it grows so densely. There's another infestation of Canada thistle on the Kenai Peninsula. Orange hawkweed. So orange hawkweed, it's a nasty little plant. It kind of looks harmless because it's so pretty, but yes, you can obviously identify it by that bright orange flower. And if it's not yet flowering, it can also be identified by it has these small little leaves that grow really close to the ground, and they're quite fuzzy, and they're green, but they have a blackish hue. The fuzzy is kind of what makes them kind of look darker and black. This photo to the left, that was taken at Alyeska Resort. There's a group of people working on eradicating it from that particular area because of the high use of bicycles that could carry seeds to other places. White sweet clover is another invasive plant species that we do have control over on the Kenai Peninsula. If you go north of Anchorage, you're going to find it on every roadside and on every ditch between Anchorage and Fairbanks. We're lucky that has not yet the case down here. So white sweet clover, it is in the pea family. It can grow quite tall. Again, like some of the other plant species or invasive plant species like Canada thistle, it could get as tall as me. It could get up to a meter tall. It has white flowers. There's also yellow sweet clover, which we don't have on the Kenai Peninsula. We mostly just have the white sweet clover. There's some more white sweet clover. That's in Cooper Landing. We've eradicated this particular population just through manual control by hand pulling it. We'll quick talk about European bird cherry. This tree was planted widely throughout the Kenai Peninsula and in Anchorage and Talkeetna and Fairbanks. They were planted because they're quite beautiful. They have bright white blossoms, so people would plant them in their parks and in their yards. They found in Anchorage that it spread very rapidly through dispersal through birds carrying the seeds. This tree grows very, very well along streams. And last year we found it growing along the Kenai River in areas that they definitely were not planted by humans. So we found that the birds are spreading these particular trees. So European bird cherry, it can be identified again by its bright white flowers. It smells absolutely wonderful in the summertime. You can see the bottom photo there. That's a photo from Anchorage where European bird cherry has kind of choked out a lot of the native forests. It can choke out alder and willow. It kind of becomes a monoculture where it's the only thing growing. There's a photo of a European bird cherry along the Kenai River. Reed canary grass. We're going to see this a lot this summer. Reed canary grass is spread pretty far and wide across the Kenai Peninsula. It's been determined that we will not be able to eradicate this particular species from the entire Kenai Peninsula. So the tactic that we're taking instead is to try to keep as many watersheds clean of this species as possible. Reed canary grass grows along stream beds. It can grow within stream beds. So the more streams and corridors we can keep free of this species, the better. And this is an example of where reed canary grass was allowed to grow without any stopping it. This is Bishop Creek. It's up in Nikiski, and you can definitely see how that particular grass is moving right into that stream bed, and the fear with this is that it'll eventually block salmon passage, and the fear is also that it will change the stream bed, change the soil and the movement of the material at the bottom of the stream bed. It'll move it in a way that will not be conducive to salmon spawning and rearing. All right, this is a zebra mussel, and this is not yet found in the wild in Alaska. This is something to keep an eye out for when you're putting your boats in the water. This could be very, very, very detrimental to the Kenai Peninsula and to Alaska. Another potential threat is purple loosestrife. This has been found in Anchorage. I believe there was one infestation on the Kenai Peninsula that has been eradicated. Again, you can see how this particular vegetation just chokes everything out. and it does really like wet aquatic habitats. So this could be very detrimental to wetlands and other areas. Another potential threat is spotted knapweed. Again, there are a few infestations of spotted knapweed in the Anchorage area. We're doing our best to keep it off the Kenai Peninsula. I've not found it on the Kenai Peninsula yet, and it's a shorter plant. It won't grow quite as tall. It could maybe get up to your knee or waist height. Again, it has these purple flowers that make it pretty easy to identify. All right, we're going to quickly talk about some ways to prevent the spread of invasive species. We all Alaskans, we spend a lot of time outside hiking, boating around. We are more or less often the culprit for most invasive species spread. So the biggest thing you can do is clean your gear and equipment before and after use, especially boots and backpacks. I've found invasive species seeds in the mesh of like the back of my backpack before. So inspect everything very thoroughly. Also report infestations that you find, which means being aware of what is native and what is not native. That'll help you, take photos if you see something that you don't recognize. Take photos and come talk to me, or you can call the 1-877 invasive hotline. That'll get you directly to Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and you can report infestations there. Well, thank you so much. I hope you learned a little bit about some invasive species we'll be looking out for this summer. I am pretty excited to get out in the field, and hopefully we can get our eyes and hands on some of these plants to get a better look at about how to identify them and what we can do to remove them from the Kenai Peninsula. Thank you.